Hello viewers, you're welcome to the Quantity Surveying Academy. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a clear lesson about how to take off quantities for doors. If you're having a challenge understanding this particular aspect of measurement in your class, fear not, because I'm going to be doing justice to this. Now, I would like to say that if you are visiting this channel for the first time, kindly subscribe to this channel and click on the notification button to get notified for subsequent videos. Also, like our videos if you know it has been helpful to you, and share it with your friends and classmates to get perfect understanding about the quantity surveying practice, especially regarding to the aspect of measurement. Now, a door is usually provided at the openings that are provided in the building. It is very important to note that we have different methods of measuring for doors. In real life practice, if you are practicing as a real quantity surveyor, it is expected that you measure for door in the most simplified way so that you can easily transfer it into your bill of quantity. And I'm going to show you how to carry out those measurements. But for the sake of the students that are still learning the methods of carrying out taking off for doors in their classrooms, I'm going to be showing you an intensive way you can actually adopt. But just take note that the step I'm going to be showing you here is a lot more outdated. But for the sake of learning in the quantity surveying profession, a lot of lecturers still adopt those methods that are actually archaic to teach students how to measure for each of these doors. What I'm going to be doing here is based on SMM7 and even BSMM4 for the students that are studying quantity surveying in Nigeria. Now, before we proceed into the calculation, let me just give us some little heads up. One thing you need to understand that doors are usually fabricated in such a way that they have frames, and as you can see from this design, this aspect that I actually produced with this double line is what we refer to as a door frame. So usually the frame usually has what we call the head at this place above here. If you haven't seen this before, you can kindly go to your room and check out your door, especially if you are having a flush door. Check out your door and you discover that there is this head, then we'll have two jambs at the sides. So this is a jamb, this is another jamb. So the jamb with the head makes up the door frame. So if you are going to measure for door, you need to know about this. Now we have the mortise lock, and on this mortise lock we have two bolts that are always attached to it. These bolts are very long so that they can hold the mortise lock at this part and at the other part behind in place. Now we have hinges. These hinges are responsible for holding this door in place as well. Now we all know that the standard dimension for door is usually about 2.1 meters high, depending on the specification anyway. So for this particular lesson, I'm going to be making use of 2100 by 900 dimension for our door. That's for the first door anyway. So the flush door is quite easy. You know, this is a sample of what we call a flush door, a door that can just open and, oh sorry, I didn't have that drawing here. I thought I did. But your normal door that you can open and close without glass are mostly flush doors, so they are the easiest to measure for. The two ways of measuring for doors can the two ways of measuring doors is either when you provide a PC sum, that is a prime cost sum for the door, or when you measure for each of these compartments that I've actually explained. Now, if you are taking the first approach, I advise that you use it, especially when you are preparing a project, a real-life project. But if you are still a student, it is advisable that you don't take the first approach I'm going to be showing you here. For the first approach, assuming I'm about to measure for this door, all I need to do is to allocate a sum, a PC sum. Let us assume that this door are 5 in numbers. If they are 5 in numbers, let me take the first approach. The first approach. Now for the first approach, all I need to do is to confirm how much one of these door can cost. If this door would cost, let's say 1,000 naira, and I have 5 doors in total, it means that I'm going to be making a provision of about 5,000 naira for these doors. But let me not just go to let me not be unrealistic with my assumption. Let's assume that this door is going to cost about 100,000 naira. If I'm going to make any provision for this door, it means I'll be providing about 500,000 naira for 5 of these doors. So the first approach, which is what we usually use in our normal projects, or that is in real life projects, is that I'm going to provide the sum of 500,000 naira for the purchase and the supply of this door to site. And that is what we refer to as the PC sum, when you allocate a particular amount of money to a subcontractor who is specialized in one field in construction. So the subcontractor is the supplier of the door. So for the first approach, all I need to do is to describe. And I'm going to say, allow the PC sum of, remember I said 5 doors, so 500,000 naira, making it 100,000 naira per door for the supply and delivery of aluminium, let's say sliding door this time around. I'm going to show us how to measure for flush door soon. Aluminium sliding door to site. Now this 500,000 naira has already covered the cost of supply and delivery of this door, and this is the most important thing. This is what we would enter into our bill of quantity. If you wish, you may even skip this PC sum of a thing, and then you just write the number of the door. You book the doors in number, in your bill of quantity you just put it up in whatsoever you want to do. So when I've done this, I should know that aside from taking care of the supply and delivery, we know we need to cater for the cost that will cover for contingencies, like the cost of securing the doors whenever they're brought to site. You need to pay for security so that at least the door will be kept in watch until when it is being fixed or something like that. So for that reason, when I'm done writing this PC sum, I'm going to introduce my ampersand, which is adding on. Then I will now say add allowance. Let's say we'll be adding 5%. Add allowance for special attenders. Let's say 5%. So it's going to be 5% of this money, and that is just all we need to do. Now if you are done doing this, you are done measuring for door. Just take note that this is simply the PC sum of this is simply a PC sum of measuring doors. So in real life project, you can just take this approach, but if you are a student, I would advise you, do not take this approach as a student. This is simply the first approach, but do not take it as a student, because assuming a lecturer asks you to measure this door and you just do this and you give it to him, at the end of the day you may end up scoring 5 out of 30 marks for this particular question. But I advise you to take this second approach, where you have to measure for both the head, the jamb, and every other accessories in this door and the door itself. So for the second approach, the first thing we need to do is to measure for the door. Then we are going to measure for the ironmongeries, and the ironmongeries, I'll tell us what that encompasses. Then we'll measure for the frames, and after that we can now think about the painting. And after we are done thinking of the painting and measuring for it, we can now move down to the review. And after the review, we can now carry out adjustments of opening. So if you are a student and you are preparing for an exam relating to measurement for doors and windows, I advise you, remember this takeoff list. The first thing you need to do is to get the real dimension of your door, like the door we have here. That is this internal part, excluding the framework. Then after you are done measuring for doors, you are going to measure for the ironmongeries. And the ironmongeries include the hinges. These are the hinges, the mortise lock, the bolts that we have here. These are the ironmongeries, so you need to measure for them. And after you are done measuring for them, then you move down to the frame. And I've told us that the framework include the head and the jamb of these doors. Then you can now think about painting. Remember that when you are taking off for these items of the door individually, it simply means that you also consider the painting of these items, since you are bringing them to couple them together. Then the review. I know somebody is already asking, what is a review? Now take a look at this, my design. And this is a door. Peradventure, this door is laid on a block work of, let's say, 225, and the dimension, the distance from here to here is only 100 mm, because like I stated, our jamb is showing a dimension of 50 by 100. 50 is from here to here. This is 50 mm. That means this dimension moving from here to this place is going to be 100 mm. So if the distance from here to here is 100 mm and I know that my block is 225, it simply means that I'll be having a wall that will still be showing somewhere around here this way. There will still be a wall this way that continues. I hope my drawing is not too shabby. I hope you are clear with the drawing. Now let's say this is a wall. After you are done placing this frame, you still have to plaster and paint this particular part of the wall, and this is what we refer to as the reveal. That means there will be a reveal at the sides of the door and at the head, although it's not showing here. The same thing applies to your window. So remember that when you are carrying out your takeoff, you need to measure for the door, the ironmongeries, the frames, the painting work, the reveal which I just showed you, and then you will now carry out adjustment for openings. So let us take them one after the other. Now let us start with the door. To measure for the door, the dimension that we are given here is 2100 by 2100, but the real dimension of our door is going to commence from here and stop here, while the height will start from here and stop here, excluding the framework. Always remember that your door, you can open and close your door, but the framework remains fixed to the wall. So the first thing you need to do when you are faced with any kind of door, please take note, any kind of door, as far as the door is a flush door, just make sure you look for the dimension of your door, except if you are faced with a door that has glazing, that means that has glass. I will show us how to go about doors that have glass. So the first thing is to get the dimension of my door. So I will pick out the height. The height of this door is 2100, and then the width of the door is 900. After I picked out this height, to know the real width, the distance from this point to this point, I need to deduct this framework and this framework. That means I have to deduct double jam. And to know the real height of this door, I need to deduct only one of this head, because the dimension from here to here is 21. So I have to remove this head to get the real dimension of our door from this point to this point. So if I'm going to consider the dimension of our door based on the height, I need to less only 50, because the height I have just head. So I will less only 50. But in this case, I'll be lessing 100, because I'll less 50 from here and 50 from here, which makes it 100. So I can still write it down 2 by 50, and that is what is giving me 100. So if I less, here I have 0, I have 5, and 0, 2. In this case, I have 0, 0, 8. So here I'm having 800, and this place I'm having 2050. Now after I've less this, please, I need you to take note that the frame, this is not the actual dimension of the frame. If you look at it at this point from this design, you will discover that I mentioned that the frame from here to here is 50. That means this place that is visible, this place that we can see, the distance from here to here that we can see is about 30 mm. Now this space, this small space that I painted, this space that moves inside, is called a rebate. This rebate is mostly found on your framework, so that when you push your door would not just exceed its limit, it would rest on this rebate. I think this is the best diagram I had for it. It will rest on this rebate, and when your door rests on this rebate, it will not move into the building. So your door can just stop at this place. So this is going to act as a stop for your door. Just take note of it. And if this will start out as a stop, remember that your dimension of your door is going to start from this point here to the point of your rebate. And if this place to this place is already 50 mm, it simply includes this rebate. So in my calculation here, I have to include the dimension of this rebate. Always take note of it. If you are still not clear, just know you are expected to include the dimension of this your rebate, except if your door does not have a rebate. And the rebate is always 2. I have one here, and there is one that is not visible here. If I remove this door and show you, you will see that there is a rebate here as well that acts as a stop. So always add double of this rebate to the sides, that is to the width of your door, and then 1 to the head, because we only have one rebate. So I'm going to add rebate. Remember, to the height I'm adding only one rebate, assuming that our rebate is 20 mm. So this is going to be 20, and then here I'll be having 2 by 20, which will give me 40. So here I'll be having 0, 7, 0, 2, while in this case I'll be having 8, 40. Now this is now the real dimension of our door. Please take note of it, that this is the real dimension of our door. Now we are done with this. But if your rebate is just remember that I made use of 20 for my rebate in this case. Your rebate can be 10, it can be anything. So if your lecturer makes use of 10, then make use of 10 at this place. So here will be 10, while here is going to be 2 by 10, which will give me 20. So just take note of that. Now I've gotten the real dimension of the door. The essence of doing this calculation is so that I'll be able to describe the kind of door that will be supplied to the site, because you don't just supply any door to the site, especially when you have different kinds of opening that is used in that particular building. Remember that your building would have different varieties of doors, so you are expected to calculate this for each of those varieties to be able to know which door will be supplied to the site. So all I need to do after I've done this is to describe. So I urge you that if you are having an examination on doors, please, first thing to do, carry out this calculation. Just get the dimension of your door as stated, then less the jamb and the head from the height and the length as I have done, and add the rebate, except if your door is not rebated. If you are studying in the Federal University of Technology, Minna, in Nigeria, just know that you would always need to add this rebate, except if it is stated otherwise. So always remember to add it, and your rebate is not restricted to 20. It can be 10, it can be 20, but I urge you to be sensible in what you do and also state whatsoever you are adding for clarification. So all I need to do now is to describe. Let us describe. Like I said, always remember that your description is so easy. You don't need to be worried about what you need to describe. Just talk about the door that you've measured for. And if there are specifications, like if you have been told the thickness of your door, the kind of door, then include it in your description. So I have my description as 44 mm solid core exterior, let's say quality flush doors with 6 mm plywood facing. Okay, both sides. So this is what I have for my description. Then the size, I can now state the size. This size I just calculated 2070 and 8040. So this size I've calculated for is what I will include in my description. So I'm going to have my size as 2070 by 840, so that whenever a supplier is required to supply this particular door, he will know the size that he will be providing to the site. Now I haven't done this. I can just put my full stop and book the numbers. Remember, I told us that the door is 5 in numbers. If you remember, I've written it here, 5 doors in numbers. So I'll write it 5 in numbers because there are 5 numbers. Now what I have done is to book measure for this door. When you are done measuring for doors, you move down to the ironmongeries. Now to calculate for your ironmongery is very simple. You don't even need to do any calculation here. Just always remember, after you have measured for this door, describe your ironmongeries and book their numbers straightforward without any challenge. So I can just say I'll move down to ironmongeries. Supply and fix the following. Ironmongeries. As I've stated before, we have different ironmongeries, including the mortise lock, the bolt, and then the hinges. So remember, when you are done describing for this door, remember you have to calculate first, then describe. You move to ironmongeries. So I'll start with the first one. I'll start with pair of mortise lock. Remember that your mortise lock always comes in pair. So I'm going to say pair of mortise lock and set of lever furnitures. Now I've already stated that it's going to be pair of mortise lock because I have one here and one will be at the back. So all I need to do is to know the number of a pair of mortise lock that will be supplied for these doors. And like we stated, the doors are 5 in number. So even in your exams, if you are given 6 in number or whatsoever, just know that you can just book it down as 5. or you can still say 1 and then you book it by 5. It's still the same. So any option you want to pick, you can go ahead and pick it up. But remember that it's just you have to state that it's a pair of multi-lock. If I don't put this pair here, this is going to be 2 by 5. But since I've stated pair, because pair stands for 2, so I would now book it by 5 because I have 5 different doors. I will now bring in my handing on, and then remember that almost everything that I'll be booking for under ironmongeries are in pairs. So I can also state pair of 100 bolt hinges. Hinges. Then I'll bring in my handing on. Remember, the reason why these are pairs of hinges is because I'll have one hinges here and I'll have the second one at this base here. Sometimes your hinges can be 3. If your hinges are 3, please do not bring it here. If you have 3 hinges, then separate it with, don't put this ampersand anymore. Just book this one separately, then you just book your hinges. You just say 100 hinges, then you put 3 in numbers by 5 doors. Don't forget that. But because I have 2 here, and it's still matching with what the same quantity here, so I just use this handing on to join them together, since it's going to be for 5 doors and they are in pairs. So that is why they are here. Now if I've booked for these hinges, I've booked for this multi-lock, the last thing to do on ironmongery is to book for this bolt. Always remember that. So I have to bring in the bolt, so I can just say pair of mild steel bolt. Let's say they are 5 in diameter. Now I can bracket this together. This bracketing simply shows that both the multi-lock, the pair of hinges, and then the pair of mild steel bolt are going to be serving 5 different doors. And that is the number we have here, 5 in numbers. This 5 stands for the 5 doors. So don't forget that. Now I am done measuring for the reed door in question. I'm done measuring for the ironmongeries. The next thing to measure for is for the framework. You can see how easy it is to measure door. You just need to follow the approaches one after the other. So to measure for the frames, remember I told us that what we have as frame includes the 2 jam that are at the side of your door and the head. So you just need to take down your booking, and we are told that the jam is given as 50 by 100 jam. So there's no much challenge here, but you need to know the dimension. Like if I'm picking the height of this jam, let's assume we have a door this way. Let's say this is our frame. Please just don't mind my rough sketch. Let's say this is our frame. If this is the ground level, and then the dimension of the frame from here to here is 2100, and then we are told that the the head of this particular frame is 900. If I decide to pick the head and book for it, because it is booked in linear meter, remember it is booked in linear meter. If I book for this head 900 remember, or mind you, the height of this jam is going to change from 2100. And since we know that our frame is given as 50 by 100, this 50 is the thickness that is visible on the elevation. So just remember that the thickness visible on the elevations are 50. So the distance from here to here is 50. If this place to this place is 50 it simply shows that the real height of my jam from here to here would be 2100 minus 50, because if from here to here is 21, if I remove this 50, I'll be left with the real length, which is going to give me 2050. So take note of that. In other words, you can also decide to pick the jam. You can decide to pick the jam from this place to this place, which is 21. But if you pick your jam from here to here, remember that you have to deduct 50 from this head and another 50 from this head, because if you pick your jam from here to here, you also pick this one from here to here. So any method is acceptable. Just ensure you understand what you are dealing with. So if I pick my header as 900, then I'll have to deduct this 50 from the jam itself. So take note of that. Let us do that as fast as possible and move on with whatsoever we're doing with our frame. So we know that the head of our frame, this is the head. Remember, this is the head. I'm picking it as 900. So I'm going to cut it out this way. Always remember, I'm cutting it out this way. I'm picking it from here to here, 900. So this is going to be 900. And if this is 900, I need to now deduct that thickness of the head from the overall height. So let us think about the height. So the height is given as 2100. I'll be lessing head thickness, which is 50, like I've explained, and this is going to give me 0.502. So this is now the real height of my frame. You can see these are the only calculations. These are just the few calculations we'll be doing under doors. So since I've known the real head, that is the real length of my head, and also the real length of the height of the door, that is the jamb, I just need to describe and book for it. So let us do our booking. Sorry, I'm going to be using this so that I can describe for the framework here. So let's describe. I will now say, remember that we said our framework is 50 by 100. So I'll have it as 50 by 100 mm. Let's assume it is wrought hardwood. Sorry, if you don't even remember all this wrought hardwood whatsoever, don't get yourself worked up. Even if it is your test or your exam, you can just write it straight up. 50 by 100 rebated jamb. Remember, I said that they are rebated from my earlier explanation, and I've showed you what a rebate is. So I can just say 50 by 100 mm wrought hardwood rebated jamb, and I'm done with this description. What is the length of my jamb? From our calculation, the length of our jamb is given as 2050. So I can just book it. Remember, it's in linear meter, 2.05. Now I have two jambs. Remember, I'll be having a jamb at this place and at this place. So there are two jambs, and the door is 5 in numbers. So this 2 stands for the 2 jamb in one door, but we have 5 doors. So I'll have by 5. I am done booking for this jamb. After the jamb, all I need to book for in frame is to book for the head. And in order to book for the head, I can just say 50 by 100 mm ditto head. I can even write it as ditto head. What this simply means is that this same description applies to this particular one I have here, because they are all they're all the same item. It's just the position where they are found are different, and this is also a rebated jamb but placed at the header part. So I will just book for the length of this head, and remember our calculation states that the head is 900 mm, which is going to be 0.90 multiplied by 5. I know somebody is thinking about, why didn't I have 2 here? If you look at this diagram, you see that we only have one head. There is nothing at the base here. This is how it usually used to be. So you have just one head, which is 0.9. Then we have 5 numbers of doors. If I'm done doing this, then I am now done booking for my doors. If you have different kinds of door, remember you have to specify them individually, but for exam purposes you only take off for a particular door with a given number, just like what I'm doing here. So don't forget to reproduce these procedures for your lecturer. No matter the modality or the step he has taken, repeat this same step you've learned from this video, and I'm assuring you that you will not have any issue passing this particular course as a student. Now if I am done measuring for the framework, I will now move down to the painting, which is very easy. Now remember that you have to paint this door. You paint the main door, and you also paint the framework if you wish. But sometimes the framework are provided in silver color, and that is if they are steel, so you would not really need to paint it, but the door itself would need to be painted since it is a customized door. Now to know the quantity of paint that is required, we need to take off for it. Now remember, if this is let's assume that this is an opening. If our door is opened outward, sorry I didn't do this very well. Now this door is going to have a thickness, and we'll be seeing our normal, what do you call it here, the lock and so on. Now you have to paint this area of the door, and you have to paint the interior area of the door. You also need to paint this side here, and that is what we are going to be measuring for. We've already gotten the length of this, and also the length, and we've gotten the height from our first calculation. And from our first calculation, we realize that the door, the real door itself without the frame, is given as 2070, and then the width is given as 840 from our calculation. Now since we have known this real length, it simply means that we've gotten the area that will be painting at the front and at the back, which is not a very big challenge. The only thing that we need to calculate now is the quantity of paint that will paint this surface, this face we are seeing here, this small face. We have to calculate it. Now let me show you how to do that. Then we can now book for this continuously. From the description I did, I stated that the thickness of my door is given as 44 mm. Let us always bear that in mind. Now, since our painting is measured in square meter, I have to know the overall length of this door that will be painted at this side. So I need to know this length multiplied by 2, then this width here multiplied by 2. So I'm going to have 2000. Let me first of all write it out. This is painting. So for painting, I have 2 by 840. Then I also have 2 by 2070. So this is 0. We have 8, 16. This is 0. We have 4, 1, 4. So if I sum this up together, I'll end up having 0, 2, 8. Okay, 8, 5. Yeah. So this is what we have, 5,820. Now we've gotten the overall length of painting. So from this point down to the bottom and the side, the length is that is covered is 5,820, while the thickness of this area from here to here is given as 44 mm based on our description. So in my painting, I need to first of all book for this square area. So the area is given as, I have to book for my painting first. So let's assume we are using not primer paint. Not prime and stop KPS on woodwork. So let us say, okay, on woodwork, we are going to book first and foremost. Remember, you'll be booking for this space, that is this place here, for the painting of this space, and that is going to be 2070 by 840. So I'll book it first, 2.07 by 0.84, close it, multiply by 2, multiply by 5. Now the reason why I'm multiplying it by 2 is because I'll paint both outside and inside. But if I state in my description that is going to be, the painting is going to be internally and externally, there's no point putting 2 here, but I did not state it in my description, so I'm going to say by 2. The painting is going to cover internal and internal and external. Then 5, because we have 5 number of doors. Now this dimension is only for this surface here. To book for this, say this small surface, this small surface at the edges of the door, we will now bring down our overall length that we calculated just now, 5.82 by 0.04. Now the 0.04, like I said, our door is 44 mm thick, and if I convert this thickness to meters, it's going to be 0.044. So if I book it down, I'll have it as 0.04. Take note of that. 44 mm thick, that is the thickness of our door, like I stated in this dimension here, that it is 44 mm thick. So it's going to be the overall length by the thickness, which is 44 mm thick. Now if I have done this, I am done booking for painting in the door. No matter the number of doors you have, just know that this is the approach you take, as easy as it is. So if I'm done with my painting, I'll move down to the review. Like I stated initially, I told us what a review is. I told us that this is what our review is, the distance from this point to this point. Now distance from this point to this point is the wall thickness, but this space that is empty, that is left unoccupied by the door frame, where you have to paint and plaster and paint, is what we call the review. You always see it on your door and at your doors and windows. So when you check your windows and you see that there is a small space left, plastered and painted, which does not cover the window frame or the door frame, that is where we refer to as the review. You also need to measure for the finishes to review. So I will now write down finishes to review. Take note that in most occasions, your finishes to review is usually measured in linear meter, because the provision states that whenever the work item you are measuring for is whenever the work item you are measuring for is less than 300 mm wide, you have to measure for that particular item in linear meter. That's what the BSMM states, BSMM 4. So in order to be sure that this is what we need to do, I bet we have to first and foremost check the calculation. Our door thickness is 225 mm, but then we're told that the dimension of our jam, that is of this framework we are seeing here, is given as 50 by 100. Remember, this 50 is this place that is visible. Then along this length, like I showed us before, we have it as 100. So if the wall from here to here is 225, I have to deduct this 100 from the 225 to know the space that is remaining for reveal. So I will now deduct 100. This 100 is the frame. If I deduct 100, I will have 521 mm. Now, because of the length of the review is now 125, it simply shows that we need to still carry out finishes to the finishes is expected to be measured in linear meters since it is not up to 300. So in order to measure for it, I can now move on and state 12 mm thick rendering to surface of reveal. I can include the ratio of mortar by saying with cement and sand of, let's say, 1:4. Now this is for the for the rendering, that is the plastering. I also need to paint that same area. I can now say adding on 2 coats of emulsion paint applied to rendered surface. Now the next question is, how do I book for this item? Now remember, we are measuring for door. The height of our door is 2100, so I'll just pick it up straight up. The height of the door 2.10 in linear meter, and then the head of the door. So this is what you just use for this rendering. You pick the height of your door 2.1 and the head of your door 900. So I'll book for the head as well 0.90. Remember that this place is by 2 because I have 2 sides, 2 reviews. We have 2 reviews, but we have 1 head. Then we have 5 number of doors, meaning we are going to be working with 5 and this number of reviews in different places. So I'll multiply this by 5, multiply this by 5. So this is 2.10, that is the height of the review, by 2 because we have 2 reviews, by 5 because there are 5 number of doors. While here we have 0.90, the length, the width of the head, and then by 5 because there are 5 heads in 5 different doors. And if I have done this, I can now bracket it this way. It's always going to be in linear meter, don't forget. So if I bracket it, it simply means that this dimension will cover for these 2 descriptions. Now if you have done this, all you need to do is to carry out the final procedure for measuring door, which is adjustment of opening, and that is the most easiest. Adjustment of opening. Now let me clarify this particular point. When I was creating a video on superstructure, I mentioned something that is relating to adjustment of opening after you are done measuring for block work. But if lecturers teach you about calculation of taking off for doors and windows, they would always make an assumption that you have not done those adjustments in your superstructure. So if you are writing an exam, please, if you are done measuring for your doors or even your windows, make sure you always include this adjustment of opening. It will give you more mark as a student. But if you are practicing in real life, whenever you have carried out opening adjustment, like you've deducted doors and windows opening in your superstructure, there is no point in coming back to do it here in your measurement for doors and window. Always remember that when these adjustments have been done in superstructure, there's no point doing it here. But as a student, for exam purposes, if you are doing this, even if you have answered a question on superstructure before, please, when you get to measurement for doors, redo it again to earn yourself more mark. So what we are going to be doing here is assuming that we have not removed the block work or the brickwork that is covering this space of the door. Remember, we are going to, number 1, deduct the block. Number 2, we are going to deduct the plastering that was done on that block. Number 3, we will now deduct the paint that was done on the block. These are the 3 things we are going to be doing in opening adjustment. I still repeat myself again. We are going to be assuming that the block work is still here. So we need to deduct the block work, deduct the rendering on the block work, and then we are going to deduct the the paint that is done on the block work. Now let us do that as fast as possible. So opening adjustment, what I would write is to deduct 225 mm block work, or let me specify the kind of block: hollow concrete block. all right, and this is measured in square meter, so you can just book for it. The space of your door is 2.10 high, and then it is 0.90 wide. Now multiply this by 5 because there are 5 doors. I'm already done deducting for block. Now remember that the reason why I'm not joining this block work with painting and rendering is because rendering is always in two phases. Remember, if you render here, you render the other side. If you paint here, you paint the other side. But block is laid once, so block does not have anything like by 2. But this rendering and painting would have by 2. But if I want to still bring in rendering here and use the same dimension, then all I need to do is to book for the external rendering and the internal rendering separately. So let us move on to rendering. So I would still say deduct 12 mm rendering on wall. This should be internally and externally. Then ending on, I'll still say deduct 2 coat of emulsion paint on wall, also internally and externally. Now remember that the area of rendering and area of painting is still the same with the area of this block work. So I'll still pick the length of my door 2.1 by the width of my door 0.9, multiply it by 2 because I'll be rendering this side and the other side, painting this side and the other side. Then I'll now multiply it by 5, which is 5 dot. Remember, if I just lay a single block, let's say this is a single block. If I lay this single block as a wall, I'll have to paint plaster here and plaster the second side. I have to paint here and paint the second side. That is why we are having by 2 under this place. So I will bracket this together to show that this single description here, this single dimension applies to these 2 description. Now if you are done booking for this particular adjustment, then know that you are done measuring for your door. Whatever kind of door you are giving, always take note that these are the same procedures you are required to follow in order to carry out your taking off. If you know this video has been helpful to you, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and also click on the notification button to get notified of subsequent videos. Like our video and also leave us your question or your curiosity in the comment section. Do us a favor by sharing these videos to your friend. Thank you for your time.